Kyoko. Not by me. All right. I really want to thank you guys for coming. I currently chair the Family Support Planning Council. Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I currently chair the Family Support Planning Council, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I joined the group 7 years ago, possibly, and I did it specifically because my daughter was getting older and I was starting to consider housing. And I could read lots of things available on the net, but I wanted to hear from other parents to figure out what their experience was with different kinds of things, with the state process, with providers. I wanted a real story. So that's how we've set this up. The Family Support Planning Council was created by state statute. So it was specifically created to be a network of families up and down the state. So there are 10 regions that meet monthly, and then they meet quarterly on a statewide basis. So not only do you get to meet families in your own area, but also on a statewide basis. The other advantage is we have access to some incredible staff. We have Kyoko Coco, who you've already met. She is our family support coordinator. And we have Carrie McGrath. Where's Carrie? Carrie's behind me. Our family support liaison. The other person that would be really good to know is Kathy Tamburello, the vice chair. Kathy has a whole full resume of experience working with families. All right, so the way we're going to run this event is we're going to hear from the families first, and we have 3 families lined up. We actually have the 4th, but her video we didn't quite get on time, so we'll make that available online when we make this PowerPoint presentation available. Then we'll hear from an agency, full disclosure, they are my daughter's housing agency. And then we'll hear from the state DDD and from the Supportive Housing Association. Because there are so many people, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We're going to possibly break midway to have a short Q&A, depending on how the presentation length goes, and then a fuller Q&A at the end. So that's how things are going to happen. And I'm going to hand it back to our first presenter, who is from Katie's house.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evelyn, and I am the founder and executive director of Katie's House. Sometimes you may not understand my speech. I try very hard. I have a difficult time speaking because I had oral cancer, but I hope you understand me. I founded Katie's House in 2001 after I realized that Katie could never live independent without supports. Katie is adopted. She is my 5th and youngest child. And as she aged, I just knew I had to do something else for her. I looked at group homes and I wasn't happy with what I saw. I didn't like the staff. I wanted to be more in control of who worked for my daughter. So I was familiar with the nonprofit world because I already had started a nonprofit in '82 providing free medical care to foreign and American kids. So I knew how to do it. I just didn't know how different this was, what I did with Katie's House compared to what I was doing before. Anyway, I founded it in 2001 and started raising money to buy a house. Katie moved into the first house in 2007 when she graduated high school. Since then, we moved her to a bigger, different house, but we now have 4 houses, 2 for men and 2 for women. we're very, very different than group homes. We use the budgets to pay staff, the budgets of the individuals to pay staff. So we're self-directed supportive housing. Parents have the keys to the houses that their son or daughter live in. They can come and go whenever they want. It's their child's home. It's not a group home. They don't have to have permission to visit. They can visit when they want. Parents are the ones who hire the staff. I don't do that. They hire, they fire. That was important to me. I wanted to know who was working for my daughter at all times. Another thing I didn't like at many group homes, not all, but many, was when one individual didn't want to go someplace, the other members in the house couldn't go if they wanted to go to an activity of any kind. With self-directed staff, they're working for the individual. So they're not working for me. And if the individual wants to go out someplace, the staff is available to take them. So I just found this the best for my daughter. Being a nonprofit is not the best for everyone. It takes a lot. You have to oversee a lot. But if you are not comfortable with being a nonprofit, you can always go the rental route instead of group homes, or you can go with a group home. I advise parents, if they don't want to do a nonprofit, to go that route. If a parent wants to do a nonprofit, I meet with them all the time. I meet with families constantly, and I will help them go through the paperwork to start a nonprofit. The reason I like the nonprofit is obvious. My daughter has a full life. She is busy, active, and does what she wants, not what the house wants, not what the staff wants. She does what she wants. She lets me know what she wants to do, and I make sure the staff is understanding her. My daughter signs, so sometimes she is not understood completely because not all of her staff sign, but the live-in at the house does sign. All my houses have live-ins. These are people that the house parents approve of and I approve of. All the other staff is solely by the parents that they hire for their individual. But the live-in is a joint effort of me and the parents. My homes have 2 house members and a live-in. I could have 3 house members, but I don't really find that necessary. I'm happy with 2 house members. It makes it easier for the staff. This way, someone's not left out if there's a disagreement. When you have 3, sometimes, especially with girls, 2 will stick together and then the third one is left out. So when you have 2 house members, it just makes it easier, I think. But our houses are big enough. All my houses have 4 bedrooms. So if we have a live-in and 2 house members, we definitely could put another house member in there. If you go to my website and look up kittieshouse.org, you can see the inside of my houses. All my houses have been decorated by designers. We furnish the houses completely. I don't want anyone bringing in any furniture of their own. There's no smoking, there's no drinking, there's no drugs except prescribed drugs by their doctor. They're out in the community. Some of them go to day programs. or centers where they spend their day. My daughter goes 2 days a week to Piece by Piece. And then 3 days a week, she's out in the community where she volunteers in a local thrift store. She goes to the Y and volunteers in the nursery. Weekends, they're active also. With a nonprofit, you don't have to pay property tax. I advise my families if they want to go that route, and I will help them to look for something in a community where they have TOA funding, which is Council on Affordable Housing. I just opened a house where the whole bottom floor is now handicap accessible. And they gave me $25,000. The town gave me $25,000 towards renovations for that house. In the past, I got $20,000 for another house that I developed. So not all towns have available TOA funding, but the town where these two houses are, they did. And that was just recently. I just opened a house in December. If the day staff, sometimes we don't need day staff because the house member is in the day program. But there's always staff available. If, like my daughter, if she doesn't go to her day program because she's sick, there's always staff available for her. I have 8 staff members that are approved to work for her. So one of them is always available if she can't make it to her day program. If you look at the picture that's up now, the bottom right-hand corner, the young man, I had him in one of my other houses. And as he aged, he became more physically handicapped. So that was what I did when I made this one new home totally handicap accessible for him. And I moved him from one home to that home. I want my homes to be places where they can age in place and stay forever. When I first did the first home for my daughter, I didn't think that far in advance. So we sold the first home. And all our homes now are going to be handicap accessible. I'm trying to think what else. How long have I spoken now?
Sorry, Evelyn, we can go on. Thank you very much. This was, I think you hit all the, sorry. I'm sorry, Evelyn. You hit all the important points, and I really thank you for sharing this story. Who's up next, Kyoko? Is it? All right, Carol, Ed. You need to unmute. Okay.
There we go.
Are we unmuted now?
I'll unmute myself. There we go.
Too many buttons.
I can hear you.
Anyway, we're Carol and Ed Pittarelli, and our son is Robert. He's turning 28 next week. His birthday is Wednesday. He's a twin. His sister lives in Alexandria, Virginia. And what else?
And she's one of his guardians as well.
Yeah. When we did the guardianship, we had her included because she was turning 18 as well. And we didn't want to go through the paperwork again. So we had all of us made guardians. So we decided that we like this idea of an apartment for Rob for future housing. And, you know, we had just been reading about affordable housing in the paper. It's a hot topic in a lot of towns. It's on the internet. So they were building one in our town. During the pandemic, we were doing a lot of walking. We're walking past it. It's 2.5 blocks from our house. And we said, you know, maybe Robert would be eligible for this. You know, even though I had not known anyone else to apply and I hadn't heard about it, I said, let me look into it. I got the application. It was being administered by an agency called Piazza and Associates, and we put in the preliminary application. They do a random selection, like a lottery, You have on new builds, you have 3 or 4 weeks to get that application in. They have a specific date where they do the lottery, and they send you back a letter with the number. So his number on that complex was 1,100, and there was 20 units. So I said, oh, nothing's happening there. But that was okay, because we really weren't ready. We were just starting to explore. As we went through the process, we applied for a few other places. Some buildings are very small. There might only be 1 or 2 or 3 affordable units. Others are bigger. So in July of 2022, we applied to this place called The District in Montvale, which is by the Wegmans. It's on the old property where Mercedes-Benz used to be. And so I put in the application. In the meantime, I had heard that you could apply for a 2-bedroom if your child needs 24/7 care. There was a way to do it. So I just checked off 2-bedroom. You have to put in some basic income information. And I checked off every box that said disability, accessibility. They ask you about a housing voucher. I checked off yes, because I knew we could get the housing voucher. And the number came back at 500. So I knew there were 44 units in 2 buildings. So I kind of thought, oh, no way, we're not going to get in here. Keep applying, keep my ears to the ground, keep looking at the paper, right? Watching for builds. So I put that in, we put that in August of 2022. And then in January of 2023, we get a package. And I was like, what is this? So it turns out that they had built one building first, and they had taken people off the list. And now they were finishing the other building, and they were looking at people to fill that building. So this letter, basically it said you have 14 days from the date of the letter, which already 3 days had passed with the mail, to get in a lot of information in this application. You needed W-2s, you needed tax forms, you needed the most recent pay stubs. If you wanted to go for a 2-bedroom, you needed a letter from your doctor saying, a little bit more information about why you need 24/7 care. So luckily, Ed has everything on the computer. He had all the tax records. He had everything. The hardest thing to get was some pay stubs, because some of his the work he has is they had changed payroll systems. It was kind of difficult. So we're scrambling. Then it also said 7 days to contact the leasing office to go see a unit. So we did that. We went over, and I think partly they just want to meet you, but they showed us a potential unit. It wasn't the unit he ended up with. And, it was off to the races. So we sent in all that information. That was all hard copy. It has to go down. In this case, this complex is administered by Piazza and Associates in Princeton. So a lot of the towns are using them to administer this random selection lottery. Not everybody does that. Some places, the leasing office of the building itself is administering it. And there are other companies. There's a place called CGP&H I dealt with a little bit too. So they have an independent, company managing this lottery. So we heard back in like the end of February, Piazza and Associates said, yes, we're going to move you along in the process. No guarantees yet. Then it goes to the leasing office of the actual complex. You have to fill out an application for them. And again, they ask for financial information.
Credit checks.
They do a credit check. And that was a little bit of a snag because Robert had no credit score. So we were back and forth with, what are we going to do? They said we could sign on as a guarantor, which we did. So then it went through. They showed us 2 units in March. And by the time you're approved, you have like 30 days to take possession. So the state needs to come in and do an inspection, even though it was a brand new unit. You need to have renter's insurance. And, you go through the whole thing, signing the lease. So we signed the lease for a move-in date of April 8th. So it's just like a year. So some things that I just wanted to talk about a little bit, because they're you learn it by doing and going through the process. They're kind of unwritten rules. A lot of these places have charts with very low, moderate income. And then they have minimum and maximum income to qualify. So that was an issue. We were under the maximum, but we were also under the minimum. And I was told that could be a deal breaker, but I talked to the rep at Piazza, and they said that if you have a housing voucher, the minimum income does not apply. So this is really important because I think a lot of people will not apply because of that. And she said that was not an issue. In the application process, I checked off all the boxes regarding disability and accessibility. The towns do get a 2-for-1 credit when they rent a unit to a senior or a person with a disability. I don't know how much that came into play here. Nobody really said anything to us about that, but whatever, we checked off all the boxes. We also checked off yes for this Section 8 housing voucher because we knew we would get a voucher, and that helped. We wrote up a quick note for the doctor, 5 sentences basically about he has seizures, he needs 24/7 care, all that stuff, very brief. Doctor signed it. We included it in the packet when we put in the application. We made sure we gave them every piece of paper they were looking for in the order they wanted it. So it was very easy to read. Put on a little cover letter. Said that it was close to his day program and the town he grew up. It's in Montvale. It's 3 miles away from our home. And that was it, really. So, it's at this point, we haven't staffed it. We are the staff. So we stay there on the weekends. We stay there during the week, mostly with him. Sometimes he's home on the weekends. So we go back and forth. We are planning to use an agency to staff it. We're just not there yet. We want to have all the procedures down. We want him to be very comfortable there. He sleeps great there, which is wonderful because that's always an issue. And so they're building everywhere. They're building so many in Paramus. They're building so much in Hackensack. They're building in Saddle River. Every town basically has an obligation to provide some affordable housing. So I think if someone's interested in this, it's a good way to go. Not if you're in a hurry. Like I said, this was like probably almost 2 years after the first application, but we weren't in a hurry. It was always something in the future. So it just worked out.
Yep. Can we go to the next slide?
There you go.
Okay, so here we go. So the state was very thrilled because affordable rent is well within the guidelines for the voucher. Not even close to the top. You do have to pay for utilities and renter's insurance extra. The client pays 30% of their gross income. That includes SSDI or SSI, as well as any jobs they have towards the rent. It's calculated once a year, unless there's some change. Like in our case, we've got a little disconnect because it's an April 8th. So we had an April 1st and an April 8th calculation because we had to recalculate because the rent went up $70 or whatever. You always have to worry about putting furniture in there. There is a thing, you can get a furniture voucher of some sort from the social services. Not really encouraged. And we decided that we move furniture from our house. We did a whole bunch of things. What's really nice is it is full community inclusion. He meets people and dogs all over the property. People say hello to him. He's really in a community. I have some pictures on here. There's restaurants on the first floor. They have a gym. They have a sauna. It's a really nice place.
Yeah. The other building has a pool in the summer in the courtyard. It's in the other building, and the gym is in the other building.
And across the street, we have Wegmans, we have Starbucks, we have all
City
kinds.
MD.
City MD. His doctor happens to be across the street a different way as GP, so it just worked out very, very well. The other thing I point out on here, because it's always an issue, I have cameras in the apartment, in his bedroom, and in the main area, so I can watch stuff. Given he has seizures and stuff, we really want to keep an eye on things, but it also gives us a peace of mind when we start putting staff in there that we keep an eye on things. And that's probably our information. In Q&A, if people have any questions, we're more than willing to answer anything that we can.
Ed, Carol, thank you very much. This is... Okay. Kyoko, we're on to Melanie now. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie McGackin. I am the Senior Training and Consultation Specialist at the Rutgers Community Living Education Project, also known as CLEP. I am the mother of two. My son Logan is 25 and lives in a provider-managed group home with two other gentlemen. I had been an advocate and professional working in the field for over 25 years prior to joining the CLEP team. My interest in the Community Living Education Project really stemmed from the support that my family received from Natalie Trump at CLEP as we were exploring community living options with my son upon his transition from the Children's System of Care, also known as CSOC. Today, I will share my family's story of how we took a person-centered approach to planning a community-based life with our son. Understanding and exploring residential options in the community was an overwhelming task for our family. It was not a one-size-fits-all process. It's all about opportunities, choices, and transparency. From a young age, my son Logan had very significant behavior support needs, the kind of behavior support needs that people do not often enough speak about. Logan is an energetic guy who's full of spirit, has many beautiful skills and abilities, but for many years, these beautiful qualities were being overshadowed by the challenging behaviors. At age 19, my son was admitted for treatment to the Kennedy Krieger Institute's Neurobehavior Unit in Baltimore, Maryland for 9 months. Upon his discharge from Kennedy Krieger at the age of 20, Logan transitioned to a CSOC group home, a decision that my family never thought that we would have to make. We needed to come to terms that our family home wasn't the best option for Logan. He needed the opportunity to have the supports in order to grow to be the best him. When Logan was turning 21 and preparing to transition from CSOC to DDD services, we needed to identify a new group home. Finding residential options for people with significant behavior or medical support needs is really challenging. And the only component of Logan's DDD residential packet that was being focused on by providers were his behavior support needs. My son's case was very complicated, and our family was really struggling to find any appropriate housing options for Logan. This is where CLEP stepped in. CLEP supports people with intellectual developmental disabilities and their families by taking a person-centered approach to planning. The CLEP team educated and supported our family in exploring both self-direction and provider-managed residential options. After learning about both options, my family decided that we were not in a position to manage all the responsibilities that came with a self-directed home and community. We really felt a provider-managed group home would be the best option since the provider would be responsible for 24/7 supports. They had to manage the home, the staffing, and Logan's appointments, as well as having an established clinical team for Logan's behavior supports. Even though we weren't choosing to self-direct, we wanted Logan to live a person-centered life. We had to share our vision and find a provider who would see the benefits in supporting Logan to live a life of choice. To assist with this goal, Natalie from CLEP completed a person-centered tool called a one-page profile with our family. You can see the example on the screen. She listened and learned what others liked and admired about Logan, what was important to him, how to best support him, and Logan's hopes and dreams for his future. The one-page profile allowed providers to get to know Logan as a whole person, not just his disability. This document focused on what was important to Logan, his interests, those talents, the activities that bring him happiness and joy. It also identified what was important for Logan, those topics of health and safety. With CLEP by our side, we allowed the one-page profile to guide our conversations at the countless meet and greets with potential group home agencies. Our family learned over time that balancing the conversation and honoring what is important to and for someone is what allows a person to live a life, fulfilling life really, in their community, a person-centered life, a life of choice. It took time, and we eventually found a group home provider who we felt could appropriately support Logan in both the way he wanted and needed to be supported. Prior to his transition to the new home, the residential provider visited Logan on 4 different occasions, and Logan also had the opportunity for multiple visits to the new group home to make sure that his housemates would be compatible. They still are today. Having compatible housemates is extremely important for a group home to be successful. So what does Logan's person-centered life look like today? Well, it's not necessarily traditional, to say the least. Even though Logan lives in a group home, he really made his feelings known that he did not want to attend a traditional day program. Day programs are an incredible fit for many people, but not for Logan. And his group home team quickly realized this also. Using Logan's community care program budget, the CCP, we worked closely with the group home provider and arranged for them to provide the individual supports to Logan in the community during those traditional day program hours. The group home provides transportation and supports to Logan in the community. Logan has been introduced to and enjoys participating in many activities during the week. He attends play therapy class, a group sports program. He goes to the gym 5 times a week, participates in drum lessons twice a week, and he just started a weekly art class. Logan also participates in unfunded activities, such as a wellness program at a local university 3 times a week. Through this experience at the university, Logan met a couple of students who we have now hired through a staffing agency to support him a few hours a week, Monday through Friday, during those day hours. These are people who Logan has identified as wanting to spend time with. This is what taking a person-centered approach looks like. Logan's group home manager also plays an important role in his life. Besides overseeing the home, she takes the initiative to really arrange a lot of evening and weekend outings based on Logan and his housemates' interests. And at times, the men choose to go to different activities on the same night. They have a monthly calendar full of activities and they really enjoy participating in their community. Even though Logan lives outside of our family's home, it doesn't mean that our involvement must be any less. It just looks different. Logan chooses to spend weekends at our family's house, and my husband and I look forward to this time with him. My husband and I also visit Logan at the group home whenever we choose. My husband spends Tuesday afternoons after work with Logan. They spend time at the park, the library, staying in the group home, and also playing sports together. Logan has lived in his current group home for almost 5 years now, and like any of us, there have been major bumps in the road. But we have learned to work collaboratively with the group home team and adjust as needed. Open and honest communication is key. It has been a long road to build a person-centered life with Logan, and it did not happen overnight. I do not want to simplify the process. It takes a lot of work, time, and dedication from the group home team and our family. We've all had to think outside the box to really make this work for him. Everyone sees the benefits to Logan's health and happiness from taking a person-centered approach. It is absolutely worth the efforts. Today, Logan has a full life where he participates in his community with the proper supports. This is a component that I really want to stress. Without the right supports, Logan would not be where he is today. Life is about opportunities, options, and choices, no matter where a person lives or what their medical or support needs may be. With a strong partnership between the individual, the family, and the provider, living a person-centered, community-based life within a licensed residential group home is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie. Okay, we're going to go straight to Angela. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Angela Fordham-Lewis, and I am the Executive Director at Fordham-Lewis Consulting. A little closer? Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of FLC, we would like to formally thank the families that came out today to join us, the families that are participating virtually, and also Ms. Dottie Blakesley, who is cheering this organization today. Give her a hand. Okay. This is such an empowerment movement known as the New Jersey National Regional Family Support Planning Council. And we are so happy to be here. This statewide meeting is designed to educate, advocate, and create better social awareness regarding housing options for people that have intellectual disabilities. Where do we begin the conversation today? We began with understanding that housing options is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is a person-centered journey that can have ups and downs. However, as a parent or a family member, you must have a vision of what you believe will be the most effective and beneficial housing arrangement for your child. It is important that you invest and understand that the highest level of emotional and physical capacity towards housing options is available. So, from the professional standpoint, your vision for your loved one is where we start in regards to housing option. Not Angela's, not Michelle's, not anybody else's, but yours. Ask yourself, who can assist me? Where can I turn for support? When should I begin this journey? Who should I be communicating with? How often should I pursue housing options? During this statewide meeting forum, most of these questions will be answered. You will leave here with resources, empowerment, and a network of supports and new information, linkages that will assist in guiding the outcomes that you want to yield during this process. I would like to share the housing models that FLC is presently utilizing to support individuals with intellectual disabilities. Each of these housing models, we believe, is meeting people where they are. So when we set up housing, we believe in the person is the person. So we're going to meet you where you are, where that person is and where the family is, so that we can help guide and elevate that person's skills. Currently, we operate 18 licensed residential programs, and 3 more are in development that will also be licensed. The residential programs range from 2 individuals living in a shared environment to 5 individuals living together. The options that are offered within our company are affordable, purpose-built homes that are developed by Bergen County United Way and Madeline Housing Corp. They are well known for creating high-quality, sustainable homes that offer a range of amenities, such as community centers, en-suites, and plush landscape outdoor areas. And they are super embedded in the successful outcomes of the individuals that we support, the individuals, their families, and our organization. There's a residential model called a group home, which offers 24/7 living environments and offers an array of individualized group supports, individualized and group supports that can be a pathway towards individuals to reach their utmost level of independence and integration into the community. Could this model be appropriate for your loved one? We have supervised apartments that are licensed and offer 12 hours of staff support 6 days per week. These individuals are mostly independent in all areas of their life. Could this model be appropriate for your loved ones? We have independent apartments where individuals live without 24-hour supports, 24/7 supports. These individuals have predetermined hours per week and may not necessarily need daily support. Is this model appropriate for your loved ones? When you achieve the desired housing options with your preferred provider, make every effort to work towards creating a solid partnership. This will not only be beneficial, it will be critical to the provider, the person served, the parent, the family relationships, that you become a collaborator with the provider so that it builds trust and adds value to the life of your loved one. Keep in mind that the new fee-for-service world has opened many doors that consist of choices in how, where, and who your loved one lives with. And that is why you have heard that there's this common denominator in our language. There's not one size fits all approach, okay? So it's all individualized. At FLC, we always say that the family that your loved one is born into is very important, but the family that your loved one will create outside of that will become just as important. Keep in mind that teamwork truly does make the dream work. At FLC, we have attributed our business acronyms at FLC to mean family, love, and care. So when you're looking at housing options and you're trying to find the perfect provider, make sure that you find someone that will, an agency that will learn it here, but feel it here to work with your child. That's how that dream will work. Thank you so much. And I do want to just introduce my business partner, Michelle Goodman. She's here. She's here supporting me and supporting FLC. Thank you, Daddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela and Michelle. I think we have 15 minutes to do a short Q&A. Kathy, what do you think? Okay.
They can't hear her?
Okay, really quickly, if you are in the room and you have a question, we'd really appreciate it if you could write it down and then just hand it to Kathy so she can sort it through with all the questions that are coming in online.
All right, there are some very common themes in the questions that have come through. So for all of the families, a big question is the idea of sustainability and succession planning. Who will take over when you are no longer able to be the one kind of running the show for your son or daughter? Anybody want to jump in? I want to start with Evelyn.
Well, when you have a nonprofit, you have a board of trustees, and they would be responsible to oversee the nonprofit after I am done.
Thank you. Ed and
we've set up our daughter to be guardian, and she'll be the prime care of Rob after we're gone. I'm hoping to talk her husband into being a guardian as well. He's a great guy.
We're looking into agencies that will take on that role as backup for, there are some companies, agencies that will do that. They'll take on the role of, I guess, like a broker or whatever.
Yeah.
They would,
because there's lots of paperwork that has to be done every year.
Yeah.
So we're looking to offload that to an agency kind of thing, so that the primary issue is the care of our son, and not whether we have to put in paperwork for the voucher or for Medicare or for anything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of paperwork regardless. It's not really so much about the housing option, although there is a lease every year and an inspection every year. There are other eligibility things that have to be done regardless. So we are looking into who would be a backup to his twin and her spouse.
Okay, I think the main thing that we're hearing from both of you is that we go back to a person-centered approach, and the sustainability and the succession planning is going to be individual for each family and how they will best work it out. So let me just, Evelyn, I think a lot of people were really interested in knowing how you have staff available on such short notice if someone needs to stay home, and how have you found recruiting staff and keeping them?
I've been lucky. I have great staff, and most of my staff have been with me for years. In fact, the live-in for my daughter was the live-in in my first house with her, and she moved in 2008, and she's been with me ever since. She is a teacher by day and my live-in by evening. So, and her mother is a live-in at one of my other houses. So then my other two houses, totally different situations. But I have not really had a problem finding good staff. I pay $25 an hour. No one wants to work for less than that. And I made sure I personally take care of them well for their birthdays and holidays. I really haven't found it hard getting staff.
Thank you. I think you're right. Nobody does want to work for less than that. Let me just see. We've got a lot of questions here. I'm so sorry,
Angela?
Angela. Just what counties do you work in?
We have Ocean County, Monmouth County, Bergen County, and Morris County.
Okay, great. And let's see. For Melanie, you were saying that you visited a number of group homes. This individual is asking, where can someone find a list? Do you need a referral form? I think, Tricia, that might be kind of your wheelhouse.
Yes. Actually, some of that we'll actually touch upon.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll touch upon that in Tricia's presentation. Wow. All right, I'm going to sort of the same thing. Is there can you distinguish between significant behavioral adults living? So I actually know families that have had this problem. When you're looking at somebody who needs complex care, are you finding that it's easy to distinguish between those that have significant behavioral support needs versus those that have significant medical needs? Did you come across that at all, Melanie, as you were looking?
So I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I fully understand what they're asking.
I think, and this might actually be for Tricia as well. So I'm going to go on a little bit more about this. I do know of a situation where the families in a particular group home all had the same budget level. They were all EAs, but there were individuals in there whose medical needs were, they were medically fragile individuals, and then there were individuals in the house that had significant behavior support needs. So how does the division deal with that?
I mean, that part is based upon each individual agency. So it depends upon what you're looking for. So that, the questions as to the best matching, you know your person best. You really want to be looking about what is it that you want for them for their good life and how to support it. And when you're matching and you're working with your support coordinator for those next steps, they're going to be able to figure some of those pieces out, and you have the availability. I'll talk a little bit about, having the availability to look and see what the right thing is for each person and that purposeful planning. So again, the division has been working very hard to make sure that the providers understand that as well.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out. I don't think anyone's going to have an answer for it, but I think it is a true statement. There seems to be a lot of things available in North Jersey. We live in South Jersey. Is there a disparity between what happens in one end of the state versus the other? I think that's just a true statement, and that needs to be something that is addressed. Mm-hmm. How has any conflict for the families, if there's been conflict resolution between the housemates, not getting along, or families disrespecting operational issues, have you had any problems like that, and how have you handled them?
Who is that for?
Any of the families, or anyone else on the panel that would like to answer?
I can answer that. What we do with each of our houses, we have an advisory board made up of the parents of the house, one parent, and one other person that they choose. So if we have two house members, one house member gets two people and the other house member gets two people. And I have one person that I put on that advisory board to break the tie if there's a disagreement. And we only had one issue several years ago, and it was resolved because of the advisory board.
And Kathy, if I could, my son lives with two other gentlemen. We happen to be lucky enough that all the boys actually went to school together, and it wasn't even planned that way, but there was, we know that the boys were compatible. So that was a beautiful outcome for Logan's house. With that being said, we also have regular contact with the other families. We make sure that we are honoring and recognizing the staff in the home, and we work together to give back to the group home staff and recognize their efforts. So we have pretty ongoing communication. I think where we're really grateful is that the house manager, we are in regular contact, right? Throughout the day, I'll get a phone call, I'll get a text. In the evening, if I remember, you know, something on his schedule is going to change tomorrow, I'll give her a text at 8 o'clock at night. She gets back to me. But I think the open communication is key. When we have hit bumps in the road, right, leadership has stepped in. We have built a really strong relationship as of today, and have, you know, really worked together to make sure that things are moving in the right direction for all the men in the house. But we also have a very specific focus on Logan. But again, I think it's that open, honest communication and working together to make sure that the men in that house are receiving what they want and need is the focus of everyone.
I'm going to do one more now, and then there are a number of questions I have, just so everyone knows, that I think might be answered by some of our panelists, so I'm going to just hold those for now. But I did want to ask this because I think this is a biggie. How do you deal with transportation to activities, to community, day program if it's involved? How is transportation provided for your individuals, for any of the families?
So I'll share, Logan's provider provides transportation to every location that he has to get to, whether that was to our family's home, to any medical appointments, to any of those activities that we have scheduled during his day. And again, his weekdays are incredibly packed with his activities, as you heard earlier. They provide transportation to all that. Evening and weekend activities also. They provide transportation to all those locations. His house happens to have 2 vans available to them. So the boys do go in different directions throughout the day. That's how they're leading, again, person-centered lives. So.
Do any of you want to chime in?
At my houses, staff has to provide the transportation. I don't give them anything for that. I have not had a problem with that. All of my houses, the house members are active. They're going in different directions. In the beginning, with the first house, I did get a car, and it was ridiculous the amount of insurance I was paying for everyone to be able to drive. Every time I added a new staff, my insurance went up. So I got rid of the car and said, everyone has to provide the transportation. I don't have a problem with my staff doing that.
Okay. Diane?
Yeah, I have a question, and I think it probably is good to ask it now of Evelyn in terms of creating a nonprofit, because I hear that a lot. People call me and say, I want to create a nonprofit because I want my son or daughter to have a home. Is there something, I'm wondering, do you have to put something in the bylaws? Because a nonprofit is, a public good, right? And how did you finance the home to start, and whether people use vouchers? So there's kind of like 3 questions in there, but I think it would be good to tease that out now.
Sure.
Right.
If we can do that in just a few minutes, because I want to get to you and Tricia.
Right.
All right, so we're going to hold that question. And if we didn't get to your questions, we're going to circle back. And if we might not get to all of them, because there's probably 60 questions here.
Yeah, and I do appreciate it, because I know there are a lot of questions, but Tricia, Brennan, and Diane Riley are great sources of housing information. So let's start with Tricia.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. My name is Trish Brennan. I am the director of the Office of Education and Self-Directed Services, the priority waiting list, and special projects at the Division of Developmental Disabilities. So it's great to see so many familiar faces here today. And I want to thank everybody for inviting me to join you all and share a little bit about the waiting list. I thought I turned that off. I don't know why it's making noises. So I start off every presentation that we do just talking a little bit about that first slide of what the mission is for the Division of Developmental Disabilities. So the DDD, our mission statement, assures the opportunity for individuals with developmental disabilities to receive quality services and supports, participate meaningfully in their communities, and exercise their right to make choices. So again, just to kind of hit it home as to, our role of the division of what we do. Today, I'm here to talk to you about the Community Care Program waiting list. For those of you who are not aware of some of the history of the Community Care Program waiting list, prior to 2012, it was known as the residential waiting list when we had one waiver. So we had the Community Care Program waiver, the CCW, and in 2012, we only had, this was the list as per reg, the residential waiting list. That changed because we had been, listening to families. There was a survey that was done through the Developmental Disability Planning Institute. The people were not just looking for residential placements. They were looking for all-encompassing supports and services through the community care program. In 2014, we added in the supports program. So I'm going to ask Kyoko to go to my next slide so that everyone, great. So right now, the Division of Developmental Disabilities has two waiver programs, the supports program and the community care program. Upon entering our service system, you're going to be enrolled in the supports program. So upon graduation, when you walk in our intake doors, and we also, prior to COVID, we did our waiting list team. So the team that I oversee did an outreach project to everybody who'd been waiting on the priority waiting list and offered them supports program services while they were waiting to be reached on the top of that list. Again, if you're not already on the community care program waiting list, there is a way to get on it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but you can come to me later. It's also on our website. There's specific criteria that needs to be met to be on the waiting list. Can move to the next slide. There's two pieces of the waiting list. So if you don't meet the criteria for the priority waiting list, you'll be put on the general waiting list. If you're on the priority waiting list, one of the requirements, it's per our division circular number 8, you will receive an annual ranking letter. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. They'll tell you exactly where you are on that list. Typically right now, so one of the questions that I always get asked is how long is the waiting list? It's about 7 to 10 years based upon the governor's budget. I have some slides on that as well. And once you're reached on the list, one of our transition and education liaisons will reach out to you, and I have some more slides to talk to you about that as well. Kyoko, if you can move to the next slide. This is the key piece that's really important, though. A person must meet the community care program level of care to receive that level of support. So, and there are only 2 ways to be reached for the community care program, and that's to be deemed an emergency or to be reached on the priority waiting list. So if you're looking to be in a residential setting, and I'm cautioning you this now because there are people who, they talk to a provider, they're looking for a residential setting, but they're not on the waiting list, they haven't been reached on the waiting list, they don't meet community care program level of care. So you need to be doing these critical key elements prior to looking at a licensed residential setting. Again, creative opportunities out there, really wanting to drill in that we want people to think about what it is that they want out of their life, where do you want to live, what are the next steps, and then figure out the supports and services to get you there. So again, there's those 2 ways that you're going to meet the priority waiting list. So one of the questions I always get asked every time is how many people are on the waiting list? Usually I have this presentation on my own jump drive and I have the up to minute pieces, but this is as per when I had to get it over to Kyoko, just so you know. So numbers may have changed in the past week, but currently right now there are 2,588 people on the priority waiting list. There's 1,815 people on the general waiting list for a total of 4,403 people. So that's just kind of where we are. We get more people averaging about, 100 requests a month that are coming in because my team is also overseeing the people who are putting requests to be on the waiting list. So that's another question that we always get asked is how come the numbers don't go change? Well, we get more people put on every time we take people off. Next slide, if you can move to that one. The other question we frequently get asked is like, how are you figuring out how you're reaching people? What are those next steps? It's based upon the governor's budget every year as to how many people, and due to the strong advocacy of some of the groups that are in this room, as to how many people we're able to outreach to each year. So for fiscal year 2024, and just so you're all aware, we have outreach to everybody this fiscal year so far that we've been allocated for, and my team is working with all of those people. 400 people. 2023, 400 people. 2022, 200 people. So again, we never know until the governor's budget signed off upon as to how many people we can actually outreach to and work with from the time we reach them to the time they are removed. Can move to the next slide though. There we go. So the annual ranking letters. So some of you who are in this room are wondering, okay, so when will I be reached and how will I know where I am? Every year in June, my staff has kind of like a little party, and it's not done like it really isn't done by like anything major. We sit in a room and we play music and we fold all the annual ranking letters. This year, it actually all worked out for the first time. That at the day that we put them in the United States Postal Service mail in all of our big bins, that we were able to push the button and get them all uploaded into the iRecord. So your support coordinator could see that you were getting that letter and know exactly what was coming. So hopefully, again, this June, we will have our, pizza party folding letters, getting lots of tape together. And then it'll all go in at the exact same time. At that point, you will know exactly where you are and how many, spaces you may have moved each year. So that's just kind of give you a time frame, and it'll help you kind of think about if you're on that list. Okay, you say you read the governor's budget and how many people are going to be able to be outreached to and what your number is. And then you can start to think about the planning pieces. If I'm about to be reached, what's next? You can move to the next slide. If you are about to be reached, though, you're going to get a letter in the mail with one of our transition and education liaisons. And they're going to work in partnership. You can move to the next slide. With our, that person as a member of my team is going to work in partnership with your support coordinator to figure out, do I meet the level of care? Do we need to do a level of care review as well? That's something else that could happen to see if you actually meet, because it's based upon your New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool scores. And then, they also will do a level of care review with you. My staff will go through each of those pieces, make sure everything's up to date, and help you figure out what's next, what am I looking for? Kind of the why. Why did I ask to be put on the priority waiting list? Because some folks, we're even finding this, they've been on it for such a long period of time. The original person who put them on the list isn't now the main caregiver. So we're starting to think of those pieces of why was I put on the list? What am I looking for? What are our next steps? You can move to the next slide. When you are reached on the list, when that call comes through, we're working very hard with all the families to use those Trying the Life Course tools. So my team is sending them out electronically to families and working with them and saying, okay, so what is it that you're looking for your future? You've been reached. Is it a residential setting? If it's a residential setting, they're going to work with you and your support coordinator to figure out, this kind of goes to the question that Kathy had asked us, where some of the vacancies that you might want to look at are, where some of the areas, and help you kind of figure those next steps out and work with your support coordinator. If you're looking to, start that planning process, but have additional supports and services while you're getting there, they're going to work with your support coordinator as well to do a new plan, to add additional supports and services as you're looking for if that right, setting in the community for, housing for those next steps. But again, they're going to help you with these pieces. And we really want you to get that information down on paper using the Trying the Life Course tools and figure those next steps out. You can turn to the next slide. So what we're also going to do, we're going to invite you to a virtual welcome session. That welcome session is going to be intended, Melanie actually talks about her story at the welcome session and uses some of the Charting the Life Course tools and the one-page profile in partnership with the Community Living Education Project, where the families will hear, the families who've been reached are the people who are invited, and they will meet virtually, their transition education liaison that night. So they'll get to put a face at the end of the phone call, with, as well as hear from families who, such as Melanie, who have been reached in the priority waiting list, what it was like, and then how they chose a residential, licensed residential setting. They'll hear from families, Mary's out there, so I'll just kind of point her out. We'll hear from families who've done some other creative things when they were reached on the priority waiting list and their stories and how they use the Trying the Life Course tools. They'll hear from somebody who was reached from the supports program, and that's what they're eligible for and what they're doing within their community setting. And then also somebody who has been reached and put on the community care program and self-directing their supports and services. So they're going to hear examples from families and move to that next step when they're reached on the priority waiting list. You can move to the next slide. So again, in order to be eligible for a community care program residential license setting, you have to be reached on the community care program waiting list or deemed an emergent setting. If you're reached, though, our transition education liaisons going to confirm your Medicaid to make sure you're eligible for all those pieces. They're going to work through your New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool, or otherwise known as the NJCAT, and they're going to walk you through to make sure everything's up to date, so that when you say what you're looking for, they're going to say, okay, how can we get the best supports for you, and work in conjunction with your support coordinator. They're going to keep that case from the time you're reached to the time you're removed, and work with your team so that you have the most appropriate setting within residential setting, or that what you're looking for at least, and start those pieces. And they'll figure those pieces out for the next steps. So you can move to the next slide. So not everybody who is reached also is going to be eligible for the community care program. Because again, it's based upon the level of care need, and you need to meet the community care program level of care. But that doesn't mean you can't have a housing voucher. And I'm going to kind of turn that to Diane a little bit, talk about the housing vouchers, and do some really creative things. So we want you to think outside the box. We want you to be informed and empowered to make the right decisions, whether you're looking for a self-directed model, whether you're looking for a residential model. We're going to, want you to start to think about, what is it that I want to achieve? Where are those next steps? And then how can I get the supports there? Not what are my menu of supports? And we're not calling you up and saying, hey, you've been reached. Here's the menu. We're saying, hey, you've been reached. What is it that, why did you put yourself on the priority waiting list? What are those and then how can we get you to those hopes and dreams for your future? You can move to the next slide if you'd like. Maybe. Oh, there we go. So when you're eligible for the community care program, again, we're going to walk you through how you choose to receive those services, whether it be through self-direction, whether it be through provider managed. Really open up your eyes to seeing what are your choices that are available to you. Helping you use some of the Trying the Life Course tools. And that's something that's new, the Trying the Life Course tools piece, and the welcome sessions with the Community Living Education Project, so that we can get families together. I mean, some of the cool parts about that is we've had families who haven't seen each other in quite some time. They've both been reached in the priority waiting list, and almost like a Brady Bunch square, they're like, oh my goodness, hi, I haven't seen you in so long. You've now been reached, I've been reached. Getting families connected with one another as we're moving through. But again, as part of, you can move to the next slide. The last bit is resources. I don't need to go through all of them. It's just something for you to have. And it's on there as well. We do have a help desk that's in your packet. So if you have questions about the community care program waiting list, you can go to the our help desk and write in any of your questions. They'll be able to help you about getting on the list, or what it means when you're reached on the list, how soon will I be reached? But again, some of the pieces for walking in the door to some of these residential settings is to be eligible for the community care program. And in order to be eligible for the community care program, you have to either come through as an emergency or be reached on the list. So I am going to turn it over to Diane. I know we're going to have questions at the end, but I wanted all of you to be aware of the different pieces that we have, and to start to think, like, if you are on the list, when you get your ranking letter, starting to think about, okay, so what is it that I want from being on the list? How can I be really prepared when I actually am reached and you get that call from our staff? Starting to use some of those tools ahead of time. So, I'm reached. Okay, why did I put myself on the list? What is it that I'm looking for? What are those next steps? What do I want for my future? What do I want to look like? That makes it a whole lot easier when our transition education liaison reaches out to you and you've already started thinking of those pieces. And starting to work with your support coordinator and goals and what you want to achieve. So I'll turn it over to Diane now.
Yeah, that was great. I always learn so much when I'm with this group. I'm always like, I didn't know that. That's great. So thank you for having me today. We work really extensively with the Council on Developmental Disabilities, and they've really provided us with the funding to do a ton of resources. So I'm going to primarily talk about those. But first, let me tell you what the Supportive Housing Association of New Jersey is. We are a nonprofit trade association, essentially. We're statewide, and we have members, and our members are organizations. So we aren't a resource to families as a consultant generally. I'll just say it out front. There's a lot of people who can help, but we are looking always at the bigger picture. So our members either develop affordable housing, which I'll touch upon, or provide services for people with special needs. And that could be people with mental health challenges, addiction, veterans, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people with physical disabilities, you name it. There are many people, you know, coming out of homelessness. So there are many different service providers providing that, because supportive housing is just that. It is the affordable housing, but it is services, because we know that people need services to maintain a healthy life and to be as independent as possible. And that is our mission, to help people be as independent as possible and live throughout the state in whatever setting they envision for their hopes and dreams, right? So we look at that big picture, and we work with our providers and service providers, developers. We work with financial institutions that fund a lot of the building of affordable housing, and we work with people who provide furniture or you know, architecture or whatever, all in that umbrella of supportive housing. So that's what we do. And our members pay a membership dues, and we provide them with education, networking availability throughout the year. We have affinity groups for our members so that they can really drill down on their own needs of education and networking. And then we also put on a conference every year, which is open to anybody who wants to come. And that conference has terrific workshops and keynotes, and we give out awards and all kinds of things. So that's what we do. And we have grants where we do very specific things. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about all the things we have on our website that may be of interest to you. As I said, I usually, when people call me and they need help, I first point them right to our website, because if they haven't read some of our resources, then that's where they should begin, because there's a wealth of information in our resources. And we've grown these over the years with the help of primarily the Council on Developmental Disabilities. So I'm going to go through those, and I'll touch a little bit upon some of the things that have been said today. Okay, so we'll go through all that. First of all, most of our resources are on our website, www.shanj.org, and there's a whole panel and another page that says Housing Hub. We created the Housing Hub because we had so many wonderful resources we created through the council's funding, and we put them in this one spot. So you don't have to usually go anywhere else but the Housing Hub. And the first thing we did was actually, we have multiple things on there, but we have our resource guides, we have videos, we have bulletins, we have people who've been trained to help families, and all of those things. And we'll go over those individually today. So the first thing we did was create a housing guide. I've been with Shaw, this is my 8th year. And when I came in, this was already done. and there are some here today, and it's electronic on our website. But the Journey to Community Housing and Supports is a fantastic guide that really provides an overview of many, many things. And it's a little bit out of date, I would say today, that it's probably 10 years since we started writing this, and then probably about 7 or 8 years since we started distributing it. And in that time, so there's a lot of things have changed, but you still can find value in this. And it starts out with going over a lot of different settings. You know, do you want a group home? What is shared housing? What is shared living? What are family homes? And then it goes into some of the supports, stories on our right, some stories of actual families, sort of like what you heard today. And then we also have a smaller guide that is just the services, because this guide is about 80 pages long, and the council felt like we can condense that to just services. So we provided that. But we have given out over 6,000 of these guides, more. The council has more boxes of these guides, and they are still really, really useful. And we have them electronically on our website. It's electronic, and we have it in Spanish. So we're still using this. It's still a great guide. Probably the biggest thing that people seem to really like about the guide is on page 32, which is the flow chart, right? People often say to me, how do I start? Where do I begin? When do I start? So this is basically is a flow chart of when you start to apply for Medicaid, when do you apply for DDD services, at what age, then what happens? You fill it, you do an NJCAT, as Patricia mentioned today. It's a really important piece of the puzzle, that NJCAT, because it's gonna tell you how much services you will be allowed to have. So as based on your level of care. So this is a great, this is still a really good flow chart. I would say anybody who needs to get started should begin to look at that as their children get older, as their loved one gets older, right? And they're nearing 18 or 21, because it's never too early to begin that process. Next slide. These are the kinds of housing that you can have, but I think we've talked a little bit about that. Individual apartments. You've seen some of that. We've had a story from a family who's talking about that, Ed and Carol. That's great that they found that apartment. You can see that these apartments can be large or small in complexes. You can have 80 apartments, you can have 10 apartments. And those complexes can be mixed. You know, they can have people who are actually paying full price for that apartment, a mixed use thing, and they can have affordable units within that. And we've seen so much wonderful development in these apartment buildings. There is an apartment building in Fort Lee that actually has a group home in the apartment building. You would never even know that it was there, because you have individual units, you have 2-bedroom apartments, and then on one floor in the corner, instead of a 2-bedroom apartment, there's a group home. But you would never know that because it's in a mixed use building, and people have full access to the community. So the building that's going on now is really, really creative and exciting. We also, of course, have group homes. We do have support families, and that is, I don't think it's used that much, but there are people who would like to have people live with them, and they want to support people who are disabled for whatever reason. And it's a little bit like foster care, where you're being paid to, you know, have a family setting and take care of people. And that is an option for people that is used and that is paid for. And then, of course, we have even intensified specialized group homes that have technology built in for people who are really have a lot more physical challenges or behavioral health challenges. So all these different kinds of options and settings can happen. And you can see that, you know, a lot of what is built into these homes are accessible things, like the way that, you know, cabinets work and drawers pull out, and that you can have a wheelchair underneath the counter, or there are tons of things that, you know, in universal design are built into these buildings. So those are some of the options that we've already talked about today. So once we got this book sent out, we realized that there were things that we could not cover in this book, and there were things that were changing. So what we decided to do to answer more questions is develop 2 to 3 page bulletins on a particular topic. And some of those bulletins are one on affordable housing. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because it's an interesting topic, and Evelyn brought it up, and it's a good one. So affordable housing is housing that has been built with some kind of funding support from a government entity, usually, or some kind of benefit that allowed that housing to be built, so that in exchange for that, they agree to make that housing affordable to people for 30 years, right? That's a deed restriction for 30 years, and that's going to even be longer in the next 10 years. So that is a public benefit, and we are very, very fortunate to live in New Jersey. I will tell you right now, because we have the best affordable housing laws in the country. I don't think there's another state that has a requirement for each municipality to build affordable housing. So that is to all of our benefits. So that is an exceptional benefit to live in New Jersey, because that means in every town, they now have an obligation, and it's taken decades of court filings to get to this to happen. But in every town, you have affordable housing, and you can see the logjam that the last group of lawsuits have opened when you see all the building going on, right? You say that every town is building housing, and you're seeing these bulletins come out with housing options that are available that Carol and Ed have taken advantage of, right? So that's what affordable housing is. And they generally have levels of affordability in those housing, that housing. They have 30, very, very low income, 30% of the average area median income, they say, 50%, a little bit more. So those rents will be a little bit higher, but still affordable, and even 80%. And so those rents will be a little higher, but still affordable. And I have people that were, you know, my my hair cutter, just to give you how much this is, how important this is. She needed to move out of Newark, and she had been living in an apartment for decades, and she couldn't afford it anymore. They sold the building, you know, her apartment building was sold. She had to move. She couldn't afford it. So I told her about affordable housing, and she started applying to these units. And she's 80% of AMI. She works, right? But she still cannot afford a regular apartment. So she actually is now living in a affordable unit, 80% AMI, and it's enough for her to be able to live with her income. So you don't have to be disabled, but it does also benefit people on the lower end, right? So that's what affordable housing is. It has nothing to do with rental assistance, but you can pair a voucher or rental assistance with the affordable housing, which is what Ed and Carol have done. I'm sorry I'm picking on you, but you had a great example. So that's the affordable bulletin is easy to read. You can look at that. It has good links in it. So that's on our website too. And all of these are in English and Spanish, thanks to the council. The rental assistance voucher talks about the various pieces of rental assistance or vouchers that exist. So we have the supportive housing connection vouchers, and just saying that when we did that guide, that original guide, supportive housing connection vouchers didn't really even exist back then. But now we have the state Department of Human Services paying for housing vouchers. And those are the easiest vouchers for you to get because they are special needs vouchers. So they have two kinds. There's developmental disabilities vouchers and the mental health vouchers, and they work similarly, right? They're different in how you apply for them, but they are. And those are the easiest ones for you to get. And then we have state rental assistance vouchers. That's paid for by the state as well, but through the Department of Community Affairs. And then we have federal vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, and various flavors of the Section 8 vouchers, and those are paid for by the federal government. All of them work similarly enough in that you pay 30% of your income, and if some other state, federal, whatever government pays the rest of your rent. So the benefit to that is that whoever owns the home or the development that owns the home is getting the full rent, right? They're getting the full rent so that they can maintain their homes easier. So it has a dual benefit, really. If the people that own the homes are getting their rent, they can then maintain that home a lot better. But you're still only paying 30%, right? And you can have that in an affordable housing development. So that's even better, right? That's even better. So that is rental assistance. And that bulletin goes through the various flavors of rental assistance. I'll just say one thing. When you get a supportive housing connection voucher, they would like you to apply for another kind of voucher so that they can take the voucher dollars and apply it to someone else. So if you're moving on to a federal voucher, then the federal government is going to pay for your voucher. And so they would like you to do that. But I don't know of anybody who's been thrown off, but they would like you to apply as you can. The benefit to a federal voucher is great, actually, because you can move wherever to another state after you've been on it for a year. And that's important, right? So you have maximum flexibility with the federal government rental vouchers, right? So that's a little bit explained in the rental assistance bulletin. And then we have a bulletin on assistive technology, which is incredible, and it's going to help you maintain your independence or help people maintain their independence. Incredible things. We all use this. I used it to get here, right? I used assistive technology to get here. I put the directions in, and now I'm just listening to the voice, right? And that's true of anything. You can have people who are monitoring their medication. You can have somebody be reminded through that. You can take that assistive technology, and it can help you with a job to you know, do your employment as best as you can, and you have a lot more jobs open to you to exercise your gifts that way. And then we also have a full employment bulletin, because there are many people who work, right? So, and they can marry that funding they get through work, their salaries, and they can live in an apartment a little bit easier and have more money to their disposal. So the assistive technology bulletin goes through the kinds of technology also that are available in the house if it's built in. So smart homes, right? Where, you know, your oven gets turned off, or you can talk to somebody about opening the blinds, and you just use your voice to open the blinds, all kinds of things that really make living it possible independently. Really, it's making that living possible for people. So that's great. So we have bulletins on that too. Okay. And one of my favorite things is the housing videos, because we did those, you know, that little companion guide, but there's nothing like seeing an actual setting. And so we interviewed 4 different people with 4, you know, different settings that they're living in. And I use these, I love the videos, because I use them after explaining the complexity of these vouchers and different things to show how they're used, right? So a few things that come up in these videos is we have a Matt and Dan share a home is a townhouse. Those 2 gentlemen have autism. They are not related. We had a parent who bought a home for their child. Matt's mom passed away, and you know, the dad found it hard and bought a home and started to live in that home and got a person to live in to help take care of Matt. But he found it was too expensive for him to maintain on his own. There are 3 bedrooms in the house. So he took in a renter, and that renter happens to be another person with autism. And that person rents while the other person owns. And the rental is with a voucher. So that person pays their rent with a voucher. They have a live-in they share. It's a wonderful situation. And that is gone through in Matt and Dan share a home. Eventually, the dad moved out, and now they live independently with the caregiver in that home, and it's a townhouse. Another one is a supportive housing, a very large development, which is a mixed, as I said, it's a mixed use setting. There are people who live in this beautiful apartment building in an urban setting near transportation. And many of those people pay market rate rent. And then there are 6 set aside units for people with disability. Some of those people are on the supports program, because you don't, unlike most people think I have to have I have to be on the CCP program to live independently. No, you don't. That person is on the supports program. He does have a job. He takes the bus to work, and then the Arc of Essex serves them, and they have an office in the building, and they serve all 6 units, right? So there's 6 people on various other different needs, right? So there are some people on the CCP program and some people on the sports program. And it's a great video because you hear from the provider, you hear from the person who helped build the home with the affordable housing tax credits, and you can kind of go through a lot of the things we talked about, just listening to how it all plays together. So that's a different kind of setting. And the other one I just want to mention, one is a group home, and it talks about the technology, so you can see the technology available in that home. But the other one, the manufactured home, is a great video because it is a manufactured home. It looks like a very small ranch house. It's really, when you think of trailer, you think of trailer parks, you think of a trailer, but this is a manufactured home, but it's sort of like built like a trailer park, and tiny homes all over this complex with a pool and a clubhouse and all of that. And this happens to be a home for someone with autism, and he loves it because he's very independent. It's very quiet, which was very important to him. And his mother is interviewed as well. It's a very nice setting. It feels comfortable for him. And his mother is talking a lot about the different situations that he tried. And what I want to bring out here is that, and what she brings out is, you might go through a few different options. Your dreams might change as you begin to know yourself more and know what's important to you. So he was in an apartment in a bigger complex, was fine, but then it got noisy. He tried a foster home, a sports family. That worked for a while, but then it didn't. So he now is here, and this works for a lot of reasons, but he didn't get there day one, right? This is something that he moved into along his journey of housing. And it's a great video to kind of really hear the story and why he likes it there. He's in a community. They have block parties. He has neighbors. There are things that are really terrific for him in that home. So these videos are great. They're about 5 minutes each. And I really, really thank the council for funding us to do them, because I think, a picture and a video is worth 1,000 words, honestly. These stories are great. Okay, so one thing we were able to do also is in New York, they have a housing navigation program. Housing navigation is a term that is becoming more and more popular. So let me just talk about housing navigation in this setting. And this is that in New York, they had a housing navigation program that was paid for originally by the state. And that allowed people to train in various disciplines, because this covers a lot of things. You need to think about your budget. You need to think about your DDD services. You need to think about Social Security. You need to think about the housing and how you're going to pay for the housing. You can, so there's a lot of dimensions to this. And what they did was they provided a training program for people to learn the various aspects of this. And they called it the Housing Navigation Program. And so they began to train people. And those people are labeled housing navigators. They're not paid for by your services or anything, but they're labeled that and designated as people who've taken this training and are, sort of more expert. And now they are on their website and people call them. And so the council said, can you do that here in New Jersey? Can you put together this training program? So we were able to do that. And we put that training on right after COVID started, actually. That's how I remember it. Yeah. So what we did was we did it all virtually, but we wound up training 35 students, all of them. And there are some people in this room who took the training. Raise your hand so they can go talk to you. I think Walter did it too. But we had, we trained people over about 15 two-hour sessions where we had guest lecturers come in on a variety of topics. So we had, as I said, Social Security, we had, universal design. We had what are the funding streams for developing housing. We had Tom Toronto come in and talk about, from Bergen County and Idaway, come and talk, and we had developers come and talk about the kinds of housing they were building. So we had a lot of different professionals talking about vouchers and all of that. We had DDD come in and talk about the waiver programs or the CCP and the sports program. So we had a lot of these people took this training, and now those people are listed on our website. So I want to point that out too. So that was a great class. We hope to do more of it, but We have to figure out what happened in New York, and what we'll wind up doing here if we do it is that agencies or people paid to take the training, say $500 for a person or something like that. And that's how they sustain the program now. It's no longer funded by the government, but we did start it. And so we do have those people on our website under Housing Navigators. They are based, most of them were support coordinators or support brokers. So I often point people that call me to take a look at that and try to talk to some of these people, because they're really the people trying to put housing together. We do have 2 lists. We have a list right on our front page. And then if you look really carefully, we have a list that you can open a PDF with more names. And the reason we did that is because the people on the front page turned in the homework and the people in the PDF didn't. So they all took the training, they all did the sessions, but we needed to distinguish that a little bit, but we're probably going to change that. But it was a terrific program. I think there was a lot of value, and those people learned a lot about the dimensions and things that they didn't know about. So they're very, very well versed in housing. So that can be a resource to you as well. All right. Okay. And finally, the other thing I want to say, this is 2 things. One is that we do have a project that is not related to the Housing Hub, and you can see on the bottom where that project lives, or on the front page of our website, there's a slider that you can just click on and go to it. So we received funding through the Division of Disability Services, and that was to create a group of resources to help towns build more accessibility into how they support people with a variety of barriers. So what we designed was leadership teams of people with lived experience, and also leadership teams of organizations that support them. It was not one-dimensional. So these leadership teams had a variety of different people they supported. They had people with mental health challenges, IDD, various aging, various dimensions, because we wanted to say accessibility and being involved in your community is very important to a variety of people, and there are barriers to that. And everybody has these universal barriers, whether it's transportation or it's housing, or how those events are communicated, or who pays for those events. And we wanted towns to be able to think bigger, because a lot of towns think, oh, I do this for aging people, but they don't think how it would benefit other people. Or they might think of a communication device that we have a town that's doing a big community bulletin board. That's helping more than the people who are, impaired by the visual aspect of those things. We have people with who've talked about hearing induction loops. Well, that helps people who are deaf, but it also helps people who are aging, who are now having hearing loss. So we have accessible ramps and different things. Well, it helps people with baby carriages too. So we want to get towns coming out of their silos and start to think bigger. And so we created this project, and it was very well received. We created a toolkit with a lot of resources for towns. So I say that because there's a lot of ways you can be talking with your town about giving them the resources to help your loved one and families, really be involved. Because it's one thing to have a home, but if you're not getting out there into the community, not feeling part of the community, what good is that, right? So this is another aspect of it. I want to bring it to your attention. It's great. It really is great. And one thing else I want to talk about is the advocacy. Very important. You are the advocates. You're going to go to your town and you're going to say, I love affordable housing. I love it, because they hear from people who don't love it. Okay. So you're going to go to your town and say, I love affordable housing. I want your next project to include people with special needs, because it's a benefit to the town to include people with special needs. They get a double credit for including people with special needs. So that is the way you can advocate. You're great advocates. And I want you to think about advocating for everybody who needs that, not just your niche, because that is going to benefit. We need to make the pie bigger. We don't need to just slice up the pie. Because if you keep restricting it to one population, you're never going to get it built. So we need to keep making that pie bigger. Something very exciting happened last month. We advocated for the next round, the next 10 years of affordable housing to be built. And that happened with a lot of advocates coming together to do that. Supportive Housing Association was very, very, very vocal about wanting that legislation to move forward. And we were able to secure the 2-to-1 bonus credits for special needs housing. And that is the highest bonus credits a town's going to get now, 2-to-1 for special needs housing. So that is very, very important that we were able to continue the momentum we've built up over the last 10 years to continue to build this housing in towns. There's a whole lot more in that legislation, but that is groundbreaking and it's going to help you in the next 10 years. It's really, really amazing. So I want to tell you that that was pretty exciting thing that happened. And you're always needing to advocate for more vouchers, for the Department of Human Services to get their money for the CCP program and everything else, to get your people off the wait list, for the services to be provided. You're going to be advocating for more vouchers. You're going to be advocating for this affordable housing. So that is critical because that is going to make that pie bigger and make your loved ones' dreams come true, really. I guess that's all I have.
Yes, thank you, Diane. This is why.
Okay.
This is why I wanted to get to Diane and Tricia. Okay, questions?
Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. So once you've, do you have to have reached the top of the list and have your number come up in order to do a supported housing, affordable housing solution like Evelyn?
No.
So that's a no.
That's a no. But to live in a licensed residential setting, you need to be on the community care program.
Okay. What impact does transitioning to the state rental assistance program from the supportive housing voucher have on an individual's DDD support program budget?
It doesn't have any impact.
Anything to do with it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, couple of just really quickies for Tricia. If your individual is in a group home setting, how many days can they be out of the house without risking losing their services?
So the risking losing their services, they're still going to be eligible for DDD services unless they're out of the state for over 30 days.
Okay.
So, but each individual agency has their own policies and procedures about that because they're paid on the fee-for-service basis. But for the community care program, you have to be out of the state for 30 days to risk those issues. Consecutive days too.
Okay, great. And just another quickie. When you're, do you move automatically from the general waiting list to the priority list at 55?
No, you do not.
Oh,
you
good
have
to know.
This is a very good piece to know, and it's something I forgot to add to that. The questions, it is a frequent question we get asked. So no, so if you apply for the list and you don't meet criteria, you're put on the general list. When you're on the general list, you do not get a ranking letter. You're just put on the general list because you didn't meet the criteria. We also have a waiting list review team. So if you don't meet certain criteria, we have a monthly meeting for our waiting list review team. But once you meet that criteria, you're going to talk to your support coordinator and get yourself put on the list when you meet the criteria. Both parents are over the age of 55. That's the easy one. That's like, you don't have to prove anything. You just that both parents are over the age of 55, send it in. There's 3 methods you can send it in. We accept it via paper. You can send it in a regular snail mail to our Trenton office. We recently changed the address from the Voorhees office to our Trenton office with some of the changes that have gone on. You can have it send it. You can send it into our help, the help desk through the email. Send it all in through the email. Download it from our website. Send it in email, or your support coordinator can automatically put it in through the iRecord. So there's 3 ways you can get it put on the priority waiting list if you meet those criteria.
Great. So for individuals that are medically fragile, who are ending up in nursing home, what is the division doing to provide more appropriate housing for them and more in a community-based setting?
So there is a new RFP that's coming out, or recently just come out for some of the additional medical settings, as well as really trying to focus on being able to support providers to put those pieces in place. And also it's really helping people think outside the box and think, what is it that I want and how can I be creative with some of the housing solutions that are out there? What makes sense? We've recently, our Office of Education and Self-Directed Services have been able to have people really craft what exactly makes sense for that person.
So is there a MLTSS? Is that for medically? That's a
different waiver. Right. That's not through us.
Right. But that is extra,
nursing home.
yeah,
Right.
coming out of a nursing home. You can tap into that if you're that kind of level of care.
Correct.
Right?
That would not be through one of our two
But
waivers. That's another waiver.
That's another waiver.
Okay, great. There are a lot of questions, and you kind of answered them, Diane, but I'm going to throw it out there again because there's just a number of people who have asked. Many people feel like taking the route of going through supported housing, finding vouchers, the difference between a federal voucher and a local voucher is just really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be looking for who are you going to call?
Yeah, I know. But they have to read the bulletin, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I had a slide on it. I also will mention that we do have on our it says other resources. We do have a find housing PDF. I want to mention that because the find housing PDF has links to how you find, because that I get asked
a lot
all
of questions.
the time.
Where are the lists?
So,
how do I find
right,
the housing?
so
there are a lot of
and
questions
then
on that.
I would say that if you read the rental assistance bulletin, it will tell you which entity does which housing. So housing authorities usually are the ones that have authority over the federal vouchers. So the housing authority near you getting on their list is important, and that, which entity does that. So I would say read the resource guide on resource bulletin on vouchers first, and then talk to your support coordinator or your support broker, because they're supposed to know a little bit more about that, and they may have resources for you there. But I will say that on the Find Housing PDF, you will find what they talked about in terms of when you build affordable housing, you have to market it. They have to be marketed. They have to do it through the press. They have to put it on something called the Supportive Housing Resource Center database, which is all in that PDF too. And those have to be done. It's a law. They have to market it virtually. They have to market it in every 6 ways. And they have entities that are responsible for the marketing of it. One of them is Piazza, right? So towns have to have a way to market it. And Piazza does a number of towns. CPG&H does a number of towns. Get on those people's lists, because you're going to see those opportunities come. Our newsletter on our website, you can get on our newsletter. We will post those every week. We send out a newsletter, and there's a little section that says housing, and those, we put those up there every time we get one until their deadline is off. So that's that. But there is no one place where you're going to say, which voucher should I buy? Start with your support coordinator, get a support broker. You can use those broker dollars and talk about the kind of voucher, what you need to do. But the Supportive Housing Connection voucher is your first stop. It's the easiest one to get, but you still need service dollars to do it. You still need to be able to live independently with your person or your, services coming in independently, whether you're self-directed or not,
I just wanted to mention the Supportive Housing Agency newsletter is terrific.
Yeah.
It really does do a great job every month of publishing what comes across to them. The other newsletter is Fair Housing Today.
Yeah.
Both of them do a good job.
Great.
I think there's a little reality too that families really need to do their homework.
They do.
And it's time consuming. But the rewards can be very much worth it.
Well, join this group. When people call me and they say, I say, did you read this stuff on the website? No. Did you know about the Family Regional Council and this Family Support Council and these groups? No. I said, They know. They're the experts. Join your local. I mean, no, really, because you guys have been through it. The families have been through it. They're a wealth of information. You know,
I think what the council certainly can do is connect you with families who have done this,
Yeah.
so that you can have family resources for families who have gone through the process. New Jersey's 1115 Medicaid waiver includes housing supports as it
Yes.
recognizes housing as a social determinant of health.
Yes.
How has
exciting.
that allowance helped individuals with IDD achieve their housing goals in the community?
Okay, that's a great question. So I didn't want to bring up housing navigation because that's now this new topic that way. It hasn't done anything yet because it's not implemented. So let me just say that. But housing navigation, as defined by the 1115 waiver, will have Medicaid pay for people to help them find housing, right? So that is it. And it'll be implemented for more than just people with IDD. It'll be implemented for anybody on Medicaid. So other people who need supports other than IDD, because you have support brokers and they kind of do similar things. You already have that through your support broker, right? But other people with disabilities do not. So people don't have help finding housing if you're homeless or if you have mental health challenges. So that will allow agencies to help people find housing. It also will, there's a sustainable portion to that. People realize that it's one thing to get in an apartment, but what if you have problems with your landlord, right? What if you're having some dispute? You don't want to be evicted. You don't want to have other issues. So housing sustainable services, which the 1115 will pay for, will also help agencies help you maintain your housing. So you won't get to the point where you need to move and other things. They'll help people get paid to help the client or the renter stay in their homes. And I think that's been a piece that's missing for a long time. So overall, it's going to help because Medicaid, the federal government will help pay for some of these services and probably eventually make its way into a budget that DDD will see more money for, probably. But it's not happening today. It's not happening today. It's going to be a while. But it's good news, I think. It's good news because we'll get more money into the state to help with that kind of service.
I'm going to read this question and kind of start to answer it. And then if you guys want to jump in, my son is a tier EA and already has the CCP, is already on the CCP list. They're asking, there's been a number of questions like this. What exactly do we have to do to be able to start looking for group homes? Do group homes need a referral from DDD? What steps have to be done? My answer would be work through your support coordinator.
Right. So so one of the other pieces is you can start looking at any point. Like you want to be the informed consumer, right? So you want to start looking and figuring out, where do I want to look? What's the, what are the things that make my son happiest most? What type of residential setting would it be? Is it rural? Is it urban? Does it have to be near? You want to start thinking of those pieces now. You're going to get your ranking letter, right? So you're going to be like, okay, I'm number, if you're number 200 and we get to reach 400 people this next year, you're like, okay, I'm going to get reached in the next, by September, that they may call me. So let me start thinking about what's in my area, what's, close to me. You can start to be that informed consumer as soon as you'd like to start to think about what's next and what is it that you truly want and what you don't want. Narrow those pieces down. It's, like looking for any other aspect in your life. You really want to start as soon as possible for that purposeful plan.
Okay, we just are really going to have time for one or two more. I know there's a lot of questions. I think for all of you that are asking questions about how to navigate supported housing, a good place to start is exactly where Diane said. Go to their website. There was a question about, can you become a member of the Supported Housing Association?
No. So, well, the nonprofits can, but we are a member organization of organizations. So we do have consultants that are doing independent consulting and getting paid to be consultants, and we have that. But we are a member organization of organizations because we need to think of the bigger picture and the whole. because that's where we feel our value is. So no, you can't be a member, but you can get our newsletter. You don't have to be a member. You can go to our conference. Many families do go to our conference, but member meetings are for members, and those are really for organizations. Yeah.
Just a quick one for Tricia. Can that number of how many are on the waiting list be posted on the DDD website, or is it posted on the DDD website?
Okay, so it's not on the DDD website because, just so you know, it changes. Remember I said I
Yes,
changed
it
the up to minute? So like what I sent to Coco last week, you know, my staff may have processed 5 more people to be put on the list, and then 5 more may people have 3 or 4 people may have come off the list this week because they've have their approved plan in place for the CCP. So it's not going to be published because it changes so often. But with the annual ranking letters go out in June because the fiscal year starts in July. So my target date usually the middle of June for us to have our folding pizza party. I find that to be fun. And so my staff are not so much fans of taping letters. But that's that's going to go out. So it's not going to be published. But what you can do is you can call up your support coordinator. They can pull your ranked letter, and you can write into our help desk at any time and be like, hey, where am I right now? But know that annually by reg, you're going to get a letter. So annually, our regulation states that you need to get updated annually what your status is. Our target date's the middle of June. They're always out by be right before the beginning of our fiscal year. So it's not going to be published because it changes. Like the number I gave Kyoko last week is different than the number I had this morning.
Okay, great.
We're coming up on noontime now. Are we holding on to these questions to try to get, or are we asking people to get back to the contacts, the person you want to speak to, because there is contact information in our presentation?
We can certainly go through the rest of the questions and then maybe try to, send something out to the attendees. One of the big remaining questions is just resources for starting a nonprofit.
Yeah.
How do people go about starting a nonprofit?
I think that's actually a longer discussion.
I don't know. I think maybe like Evelyn, if someone said to you, I can't wait to start a nonprofit, what would you tell them? Like the 3 points.
First, you have to pick a name, and you have to write a mission statement. You have to become incorporated, and then you apply for your nonprofit status. I've helped many families do that, and I do it for free. I would gladly help people. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I'm 80. I would help people. I only help parents. I don't want to do a nonprofit for someone if they're not a parent. I find it easy. Some people find it difficult. I find it more difficult with all the paperwork from the state. Having to do the housing vouchers, having to do the food stamps and utility assistance and Medicaid recertification. All of that is crazy. That is what I find restrictive, not the nonprofit.
Yeah, the only reason why I thought it might be complicated is because key to getting a non-501c3 is an IRS ruling. And that has become a little bit more difficult to get because they're just realizing that the federal government loses money if there are more tax exempt organizations out there. But if you do have a very clear mission statement, usually it's not that much of an issue. I did want to say a couple of things. Melanie talked about communication with your agency. That is very important. The reason why Angela's firm and does a great job is because I made it very clear I want to hear everything. So I get calls and texts at midnight. I'm good with that. When you set up your housing, if you're using an agency, you have to make it clear how you want your communication to go. Also, Diane talked about the new law that was recently signed that replaces COA.
Yeah.
Really good law. I'm hoping that Shah will do some sort of summary for people because you can use that along with that last page she had in her presentation to advocate clearly with your municipality in developing more housing. I want to thank our parents for joining us, Melanie, Ed and Carol, Evelyn, Anne, Angela, Diane, Tricia. This was an incredibly informative session, and thank you very much.